Hello dear students, Assalamu alaikum. This is your course instructor Dr. Shizayas Khilji from Department of Botany, Division of Science and Technology, University of Education, Township, Lahore. And the course title is Environmental Biology. The topic for today's talk is forest. What is desertification? Like various causes, their impacts, and the forest conservation. So the forest, we already know that it is a large area of the land which is dominated by the trees. 100 or more precise definitions of the forests are used, like they are dominant terrestrial ecosystem of the earth and are distributed all around the global earth. And they also account for 75% of the gross primary production of the earth's biosphere. So, what is the desertification? It is a type of the land degradation in the dry lands in which biological productivity is lost due to the natural processes or induced by the human activities, whereby fertile areas become increasingly more arid. It is the spread of the arid areas caused by a variety of factors such as through climate change, particularly the current global warming, and through the overexploitation of the soil through the human activity. So, throughout the geological history, the development of the deserts has occurred naturally. However, when the desert emerged due to the unchecked depletion of nutrients in the soil that are essential for it to remain arable, then a virtual soil death can be spoken of, which traces its cause back to the human overexploitation. So, it is defined as the process by which fertile land becomes desert, typically as a result of drought, deforestation, or inappropriate agricultural practices. Major causes of desertification are included the overgrazing and deforestation. So many scientists think that one of the most common causes is overgrazing or too much consumption of vegetation by cattle or other livestock. So scientists agree that the existence of a desert in the place where the Sahara Desert is now located is due to the natural climate cycle. And this cycle often causes a lack of water in the area from time to time. So there is a suggestion that the last time that the Sahara was converted from savanna desert, it was partially due to overgrazing by the cattle of the local population. So the overgrazing occurs when the farmers allow livestock to graze to the point where they damage the vegetation. Both overgrazing and deforestation can lead to desertification because they remove or damage the vegetation that is protecting the land and keeping it moist and fertile. Deforestation also removes the trees which hold the soil together by their roots. Removing the tree leaves the soil bare to wind and other elements, which may lead to desertification since the topsoil is blown away, dried out, or washed away by means of rain. So, overgrazing and woodcutting are also responsible for most of the desertification. Rangelands cultivation practices may include the accelerated water and wind erosion are the most reasonable and the responsible in the rain-filled areas. So this leads to the erosion and oxidation of the fertile soil. So overcultivation always avoided. Inappropriate land use such as monocultures and unsustainable land management practices such as deforestation agricultural practices and overexploitation of the water resources can cause the land degradation that can be further aggravated by condition of drought. Excessive use of fertilizers and the pesticides to maximize their crop field in the short term often leads to significant damages for the soil. The long run, this may turn from arable into the arid land over time, and it will no longer be suitable for farming purposes after a few years of excessive farming, since the soil has been damaged too much over time. The next is the urbanization. As the development can cause people to go through and kill the plant life, it can also cause issues with the soil due to the chemical and other things that can harm the ground. As areas become more urbanized, there are fewer places for the plants to grow, thus causing desertification. Soil pollution. It is a significant cause of desertification. Most plants are quite sensitive to their natural living conditions. When soil becomes polluted due to the various human activities, the respective area of the land may suffer from desertification in the long run. Higher the level of pollution, more will be the degradation of the soil over time. So there are some devastating effects of the desertification, like decrease in crop yield. So desert in some of the area, it is impossible to grow the substantial crops without the special technologies. So this can cost a lot of money to try and do, so the farmers will have to sell their land and leave the desert area. A major effect of desertification is the decrease in crop yield. Once the land turns from arable to arid, it is often no longer suitable for farming purposes anymore. In turn, many farmers may lose their livelihood since they often solely rely on the farming as their single source of income. So, if their land becomes arid, they may no longer be able to provide the sufficient crop yields to make a living out of it. Then comes second effect is the hunger. Without farms in these areas, the food that those farms produce will become much scarcer, and the people who live in those local areas will be lot more likely to try and deal with hunger problems. Animal will also go hungry, which will cause even more of a food storage. Flooding. Without plant life in an area, flooding is a lot more imminent. Not all the deserts are dry. Those that are wet would experience a lot of flooding because there is nothing to stop the water from gathering and going all over the place. So, flooding can also negatively affect the water supply, which will affect the process of desertification. Poor quality water. If an area becomes a desert, the water quality is going to become a lot worse than it would have been otherwise. This is because plant life plays a significant role in keeping the water clean and clear. Without its presence, it becomes a lot more difficult for us to be able to do that. Overpopulation. When areas start to become desert, animals and the people will go to other areas where they can actually thrive. This causes crowding and overpopulation, which will, in the long run, end up continuing the cycle of desertification that started this whole thing anyway. Poverty. All of the issues that we have talked about above related to the problem of desertification can lead to poverty if it is not kept in check. Without food and water, it becomes harder for the people to thrive and they take a lot of time to try and get the things that they need. Biodiversity loss. In general, the destruction of habitat and desertification may also contribute to the loss of biodiversity. While some species may be able to adjust to the altered environmental conditions properly, many species will not be able to do so, and as a result, they may suffer from the serious declines in their population. Endangerment and extinction of the species. The desertification results in a decline in population for which the species may become endangered or even extinct. So this problem is especially severe for the species that are already endangered, as the small number of animal or the plants that remains may also die off over time, which may even lead to the extinction of the very important species on the planet Earth. The last effect is of the desertification is the migration, like the destruction of livelihood of the farmer. This problem becomes even worse when the larger area of the land that are currently used for the farming will then no longer be suitable for farming due to the lack of the water triggered by the global warming. So this results in the serious migration movements. Our next topic for today's discussion is called as another is to solve all these problems, their causes, their effects in terms of their finally solution, that how we can overcome the problem of desertification. Policy change related to how people can farm. If the people are using lands to get natural resources or they are developing it for the people to live on, then the policies that govern them should be one that will help the land to thrive instead of allowing them to harm the land further. So the policy changes could be sweeping or they could be depending on the type of the land use at hand. So, policy changes related to how people can farm. In countries where the policy change will actually be enforced on those in the country, the policy changes related to how often people can farm and how much they can farm on certain areas could be put into the place to help to reduce the problems that are often associated with farming and desertification. Then comes to the education. In developing countries, education is an incredibly important tool that needs to be utilized in order to help the people to understand the best way to use the land that they are farming on. By educating them on the sustainable practices, more land will be saved from becoming desert, and there need to be research and application of latest technology that pushes the limits of what we currently know about the drivers and the desertification. So advancements could also help us to find more ways to prevent the issue to becoming it an epidemic. Restricting the mining practices. Mining often implies the destruction of larger areas of the land. Therefore, it should be regulated by the government to keep the nature reserves intact and protect the natural habitat of many animals and plants. Thus, less land will be arid and the desertification issue can be mitigated into the certain extent. Reforestation. The areas that have been subjected to deforestation in the past, they should be considered for reforestation. Planting the trees in those areas are quite important since they are the natural carbon dioxide storage spaces. They slow down the global warming and contribute to maintaining a natural balance. Sustainable practices to prevent desertification from happening. There are plenty of sustainable practices that can be applied to those acts that may be causing desertification. By adding these to what we should be doing with land, we can ensure that we don't turn the entire world into the desert. Technology advances. Research is the key to overcome most of our environmental problems, and it applies to desertification also. In some cases, it's difficult to try and prevent the desertification from happening. So, last part of the forest is the forest conservation. So, what is the forest conservation? Forest conservation is the practice of planning and maintaining the forested areas for the benefit and sustainability of future generations. Forest conservation involves the upkeep of natural resources within a forest that are beneficial for both human and the ecosystem. Forest conservation acts to maintain, plan, and improve forested areas. Forests also provide wildlife with a suitable habitat for living, along with filtering the groundwater and preventing runoff. Where there are so it can be defined, I have already defined this term forest conservation, which is a practice of planning and maintaining forested areas for the benefit and sustainability of future generation. So where geological conditions permit vegetation to take the form of trees, the forest is one of the major form of natural landscape. The forest resources are valuable as an integral part of the ecosystem from the commercial point of view and as a provider of shelter to the wildlife. Today, forest provides the raw material for over 5,000 products worth about $23 million. They support industry which employs 1.3 million people. In fact, forests are still the natural habitat of several species of the plant and the animal, as well as of several tribal groups of the world. But the most unfortunate setback came in the form of commercial exploitation, which resulted in mass destruction of forest cover year after year. Originally, over two-fifths of the land area of the Earth, exclusive of the polar regions, or about 1,200 million hectares, was covered with a natural forest. But now, more than one-third of this area has been robbed by man of its natural protective cover and has been turned into the barren land. So more destructions has been done after the industrial revolution and urbanization. During the colonial period, commercial exploitation began, and this was the main cause of the depletion of the forest. So there are various techniques or the methods in order to conserve the forest that are enlisted and will be discussed one by one. The following steps should be taken for the conservation of forest, that may include or that may be taken, or they are the technique of the forest conservation which are used to improve the forested areas and to make the available resources sustainable. The first comes afforestation. It is a proactive method which is used to improve the forests. Afforestation is the planting of trees for commercial purposes. The supply of wood products from the afforested areas has prevented the overuse and destruction of natural forest. Instead of taking resources from the existing natural forest, afforestation is a process that is used to plant the trees and use them as resources instead of naturally existing forest. Afforestation occurs when the planting of the trees is introduced to an area that previously had no trees. Like this process of afforestation can be done on a barren land or on the desert. This creates the habitat for the wildlife, recreational areas, and the commercial use while not causing harm to any of the natural forest. Second is the reforestation. It is another method to sustain the forest by improving existing forested areas. Reforestation is a method of planting trees in an existing forested area. This method is used in reaction to deforestation. When forests are removed without re-establishment, they can be reforested by planting more trees in the same area to rebuild the existing forest. So this method is applicable to the already existing forest area in which the plantation of the plants have been removed by the process of deforestation. Selective logging. It is another method which is used to meet the needs of both the forest and the humans seeking economical resources. Selective logging is the removal of the trees within a stand based on size limitations. This technique allows for the forest regeneration to occur between and after the selective harvest cycles. Next is the controlled burn. Although it can be threatening if it is not controlled, fire is a successful way to conserve the forest resources. Controlled burn is a technique that is used to manage the forest. Fire can be highly beneficial to the ecosystem within a forest. It renews the forest undergrowth and also stimulates the germination of the tree species. In some species of the trees, such as sequoia, seedlings remain dormant until broken by the fire. As a result, these species cannot reproduce without the fire. Regulated and plant cutting of the trees. Like one of the main reasons of deforestation is commercial felling of trees. According to an estimate, about 1600 million cubic meters of the wood have been used for various purposes in the world. Although trees are considered as the perennial resources when exploited on a very large scale, their revival cannot be possible. Therefore, cutting should be regulated by adopting the methods of clear cutting, selective cutting, and shelter wood cutting. Then, last method or the technique in order to conserve the forest is the proper utilization of forest product and the forest. Generally, forests have been cut for logs and rest of the trees, stump, limbs, branches and the foliage etc. are left out in the forest as worthless debris. Further, the waste occurs at the sawmill. There is a need to use all this waste material. Now, several uses have been developed, and products like waterproof glues, boards, etc., can be obtained. Similarly, forests can easily be used or developed as tourist centers. By using them as tourist centers, the country can earn substantial foreign exchange. This practice has been adopted by many countries, both developed as well as developing countries. So, this was all about the forest importance. The major forestry covers how much percentage of our land area, and with the passage of time, deforestation is increasing day by day. How we can conserve the forest by using following techniques and various methodologies. And I will end up with a quotation that reversing deforestation is complicated. Planting a tree is simple. So plant more and more trees in order to avoid these type of any type of pollution problem which are devastating human health, animal health, and overall ecosystem and environment. Here is a list of all the references. Thank you very much for listening.